Newspaper headlines. I'll start off with the Business and Financial Times. There's a big story on the front page, and we'll be discussing into detail, when we begin that conversation with our guest this morning. It says that NAPCO recruits complicit in planting for food and jobs fertilizer smuggling. That's on page 3. These are allegations that have been made, and I'll read that story further for you so you can get all the details on that. You remember that just about 2 weeks ago or so, rice farmers in the Upper West region were complaining of the hike in prices of fertilizers, and they were saying that it was because the subsidized fertilizers were not available to them, and so those who were selling them on the markets had increased the price, and it made it very difficult for them to be able to purchase the fertilizer, and so they had reduced the number of plots or acres that they were planting rice, and that was affecting their business as well. We'll get into it. But public equity ideal for raising required capital, experts to insurance firms, and also Ghana cares should focus on few thriving sectors, according to the IMF. Chartered tax practitioners call for NGOs tax audit. Now, Daily Graphic also says dealing with challenges, NPP remains best option, President insists, and he's very sure that come December 7, 2024, another NPP candidate will emerge winner and will eventually be sworn in as president. Imagine what the NDC is saying about this. But yesterday was the 29th anniversary of the National New Patriotic Party, and they celebrated, of course, with the presence of the president, the vice president, and other key members of the NPP. Saglemi Hassan Buhaha, Collins Dauda, former Works and Housing Minister, and 4 others have been granted bail. And also changes in police hierarchy. Page 11, we're told about 33 changes have been made. If there's time, we'll get into it. But government releases 260.4 million Ghana cedis to pay fertilizer companies. That will be on page 13. Ghanaian Times, swearing in of new special prosecutor, take up fight against corruption in an independent, impartial manner. President to Kissi Agyebeng, and his photo is right on the front page as well. The former Works and Housing Minister under the erstwhile Mahama government, Honorable Collins Dauda, who is also the MP for Sutifi, is also on the front page, and it says Collins Dauda granted self-recognizance bail, 4 others on $322 million bail, and also geared close to naming strategic partner for aluminium industry. Dr. Michael Ansah is the CEO of the company. And Daily Guide says president swears in special prosecutor. 2 Mahama ministers, others gets $322 million bail in the Saglemi housing scandal. NPP will win 2024, according to the president, and government releases 800 million Ghana cedis for contractors. The Finder says Ghana, La Côte d'Ivoire sign agreement to make Ghana cocoa headquarters. And Abinal Sayasari supports education and healthcare sectors with 20 motorbikes. Now, Kissi Agyebeng has what it takes to succeed, according to the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Backsliding, bickering will not be entertained. President, party leadership warn NPP members. In the studios this morning, he is a member of the NPP communications team. He's Kwesi Kwarteng. Good morning to you. We're still waiting the presence of the member for the communications team from the NDC side, but I hope you're doing well.
Good morning, brother. I'm doing well. How are you too?
Not bad at all. Happy anniversary. How did it go yesterday?
It's okay.
You don't sound too confident about it.
No. Apparently I couldn't go there because I had other engagements. I mean, in the mornings you have to be doing radio, afternoon TV. So personally I wasn't there, but I mean, and that was a very good celebration. The president made a profound statement, and of course it was based on the fact that records, if you compare to our archivers, the NDC, certainly we've done tremendously well within the past years that we've all had to serve the people of Ghana. So far as I'm concerned, I think it's positive. It was good, and we wish ourselves happy anniversary. So it's our 29th birthday actually. So happy 29 years to all of us.
You say you've done tremendously well and much better than the NDC. A section of Ghanaians don't think so, and these are some Ghanaians who even voted for and campaigned for President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and they are unimpressed.
Yes, so it is possible. I mean, certainly, you are unable to actually please everyone at the end of the day. But of course, we accept those criticisms and those challenges. And as a government, our duty is to prioritize the interests, the expectations of our people. But then again, if anybody is to raise such conversations, I mean, there are references that you have to do. If you recall, even from President Akufo-Addo 2017 till now, when we were coming into office, we came and, of course, we campaigned based on certain policies and ideas. We also campaign based on certain flagship policies. And you can measure us on that. So, I mean, these are objective references that you can make to. These are objective criteria that you can take. It is not a subjective thing for a party A or party B or person A or person B to determine. I mean, the records are there. If you look at the promises that we made, I mean, if you take it even sector by sector, for instance, if you take something like education, I mean, the challenges that were with education was access, quality, and relevance. If you look at access, for instance, within the past 5 years that we came into office, access has been tackled critically, and the statistics are there. You look at the program like the Free SSS, for instance, within a space of 4 years, enrollment has increased from, say, 800,000 to 1.2 million. So these are facts. These are open secrets that any person knows. If you want to tackle a sector like, say, the health sector, there are significant contributions that we've made there, and of course we are still making. Like
what exactly? Agenda 111. We still have not seen one hospital.
Yes, built. Exactly. But I mean,
after a promise was made, that they will be built in a year.
Yes. But I mean, when you say that, it's only fair that you also have to look at the circumstances surrounding us, i.e., COVID, and the fact that at the end of the day, government will still have to recover economically, because I mean these are all have monetary complications and monetary commitments that you have to make. But the point is, if you look at, for instance, the health sector that I was still making reference to, I mean, if you look at the investment that we've made, and if the point is, even if we want to talk about development when it comes to health sector, it could be soft or it could be hard. We came into office where nurses were literally have been home for the past 3 years. If you look at one of the drives that were motivating our nursing trainees, the nursing training allowance, we had to restore it and still place nurses within the same period that we came. And so these are all some of the critical interventions that we did to help our health sector. Because at the end, one government may elect to build A or structure B as a hospital. If there are no resources, if there are no human resources to work there, certainly you won't get there.
But if you don't even have the facilities and you are still adding on to the human resource,
yes, so,
then of course.
So it's the more reason why development has always been a continuous process. And it also boils down to priorities. I mean, bottom line is that whether you have facilities, whether you have whatever resources, you will still need that human base to work. And for us, that was our major priority, because I still do not understand the reason why you can elect to say or choose to build hospital A, and at the end of the day, you have nurses in the house. But bottom line is that problem has been resolved. If you want to probably go into a sector like, say, industrialization, we are not saying that we've solved every problem with the industrialization. But, I mean, significantly, if you match our contributions and our records to other governments in the past, we've done far, far, far better. Let's go to...
Have you?
Yes, we've done far. I mean, the records are there. Recently, I think the Minister for Trade and Industrialization, the Honorable Alan Chamatin, also engaged the media, and he listed at least 56 factories that are currently in operation. So
these are not new factories that were built.
No, he's talking about 56 new ones. And I mean, of course, there were some existing factories that were collapsing. And then government and the private sector all have to come together and support it. So you can take them sector by sector. For instance, let's go to something like, employment, which has become quite topical.
And I like that you're coming to that, because we'll talk about NAPCO and the fact that they are being fingered in the subsidized fertilizer smuggling scandal.
Yes, so that aspect probably, if you look at it, it's more or less like a criminal issue. I mean, this is entirely different from the fact that a government created a job initiative. So for me,
but these are the same people who are complaining that they have not received their allowances.
Yes, they are obviously they are appropriate authorities to deal with some of these problems. For instance, if today any person in TV3 engages in any criminality, there are authorities, there are institutions that deals with that. But it doesn't change the fact that person A or person B, has been employed in TV3.
I'll let you hold on. Let me just read this story quickly. And this was on the 10th of July, 2021, where it said that fertilizer shortage hits Upper West region. So it said that there's a shortage of subsidized government fertilizer in the Upper West region, prompting fears that the prices of food in the country could shoot up, resulting in famine in the region. Many smallholder farmers in the region who largely depend on the subsidized fertilizer are now cutting down the number of acreages that they plan to farm this year. The only fertilizer available for them is the non-subsidy fertilizer in the open market, which is 4 times the price of the subsidized fertilizer. So a bag of subsidized fertilizer goes for 48 Ghana cedis, whilst that of the commercial fertilizer is sold around 160 Ghana cedis. And the government over the last few years often openly bragged about the success of planting for food and jobs in the country, especially in the Upper West region. Now, fast forward, of course, we saw some videos of farmers who had queued in the open market trying to purchase some of these, bags of fertilizer. And we'll try and play that story when we're able to get it. But now in the news this morning, and this is on BNFT, it says that a monitoring report released by the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, PFAG, has indicted some personnel of the Nation Builders Corps, NAPCO, are complicit in the ongoing smuggling and hoarding of subsidized fertilizers under the Planting for Food and Jobs program. Now, the report, which was compiled by the association in 2020 and released in June this year, indicated that 90% of farmers, both male and female, in 7 selected beneficiary districts across the country, have said that NAPCO officials working at the Department of Agric in these districts are heavily involved in the Planting for Food and Jobs fertilizer smuggling scourge. Now, the 7 districts where the monitoring was conducted include Hohoe, Shayo Sudoku, Gushegu, West Mampusi, Mampugu, Mwaduri, Pusiga, and the Sisala East districts. And PFAC said key indicators for choosing the above-mentioned districts for the monitoring were the heavy presence of its membership, high level of smuggling in these districts, border towns, and high fertilizer consumption in these areas. The association indicated that it has interviewed about 4,200 farmers through focus group discussions in the districts, 14 fertilizer retailers and officials of the regional and district departments of Agric to ascertain the fact. And it says that it mentioned the collusion between fertilizer dealers and security agencies and purchasing of more than the agreed quantities as banes of the subsidy program. And quickly, Ghana lost about $12 million in 2018 to fertilizer smuggling. The amount, according to the Ministry of Food and Agric, has been skyrocketing in subsequent years due to some unscrupulous persons who continuously perpetrate the menace. In fact, in June 2021, and I'll end with that, about 13,500 bags of subsidized fertilizer valued at 1.6 million Ghana cedis were carted out of the country through the Sisala West District to Burkina Faso. And the president revealed this when he visited some constituencies in the Upper West region. We'll be joined shortly by a rep from the side of the NDC. I believe he's around, and so we'll get him ready to join us. But Kissi, what do you say of this report that has been put out?
I mean, when you hear some of these things, it's not only shocking, but it gets sad. And I mean, the question that I always in such circumstances is, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Of course, it does not necessarily mean that I'm impugning any guilt in what they are doing, but clearly, on the face value, I mean, this amounts to a criminality, but I'm not impugning guilt necessarily. I mean, since they're appropriate, there will be investigation, and then such pronouncement will be made. But then, if you look at it, I mean, this has been a persistent problem, even, I mean, predating MPP. And it just shows our nature as a people, why and how we just keep destroying ourselves. Because at the end, if you look at it, government will bring a policy. Government will play its part and provide its consideration when it comes to whatever policy, that initiative that he has brought. But at the end of the day, let's be very practical and let's be very realistic here. It will be literally or virtually impossible for government to police every fertilizer that is being distributed. And so that is where, for all of us, probably there is that duty or burden on all of us to help the system run. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling that these are NAPCO people. These are people that ordinarily you are expecting that the government is thinking around to see how even the exit plan will be, how they are going to be enrolled into the mainstream public or the civil service. And all of a sudden, ordinarily you would have expected that probably they would have had that sense of patriotism. They would have been just been working for the country so that they will be rewarded.
But these are the same people that you haven't paid for months.
No, I mean,
they've been complaining incessantly about that. And so if they are complaining,
Bella,
could that not be a reason why, even though it's wrong, they would engage in this level of corruption?
Bella, you see, we shouldn't justify and glorify some of these things.
No, but that's why I said that even though it is wrong, you haven't paid them for months.
I am not sure. First of all, it is not accurate that we've not paid them. They were paid just last month. That is one. Two, I am not sure.
All NAPCO personnel have been paid?
So far as I'm concerned, they have been paid. Secondly, I am not sure. The suggestion is that if today, Media General probably refuses to pay you or delays in paying you, the best way that you have to handle that is probably to take one of the cameras and go and sell. I'm not sure that's what we are encouraging. Of course, we will call on government to do the needful when the need arises. But even with that, so far as I'm concerned, as I tell you, they have been paid. Their allowances, I think their stipends, that was somewhere last month. Because I think I sat on a platform and this even issue came up and it was dealt with. But the point is that I can inform you that NAPCO personnel has been paid. But
every single one of them.
So far, but I mean, clearly, granted, that's even, say, 1,000 or whatever has not been paid. It is not a justification that.
No, but those are families. And yes, it's not a justification, but those are families that they have to take care of. And so we look at it as maybe just 1,000. But if families depend on these NAPCO employees, that's what? More than the 1,000.
Bella, I am advancing two arguments. I'm saying that, first of all, government has paid NAPCO personnel with their monthly allowances. I am aware there was a backlog of, I think, 3 months or so that has been cleared. But granted that even government has not paid them, it is not a license, right, for you to go and steal. You are not suggesting, and again, I repeat, that if today Media General delays in the payment of, and again, I mean, it is not deliberate that government will deliberately or intentionally deny NAPCO personnel of their salaries. Of course, we all do admit that we were hit with pandemic, we need the economic turnaround, we are having economic recovery, and some of these things, they are expected. This is not the first time that we are seeing these challenges where there have been delayed in payment, whether to NAPCO personnel, whether to public service personnel, or whether to civil servants. I mean, we've had that incidences in the past, whether the MPP or the NDC is in power. These are the challenges that we can have a different conversation about revenue mobilization, and the fact that when you take, as a country, about over 60% of our revenue is literally going into the payment of public service, and at the end we have little to even do for our development and other things. That is one other aspect of the conversation. But I'm saying that whether your payment delays or not, of course, we will tell your employer and we'll call on the employer to release your bursaries to you. But it is not a license. And let us not glorify and justify it.
Can you survive on an empty stomach for that long?
We cannot survive on an empty stomach.
And so if you find yourself in a position where, unfortunately, maybe you are not the corrupt type, but you have not been paid for 3, 4, 5 months,
Bella,
and you're seeing people smuggling fertilizer,
Bella,
your family is hungry.
Bella,
you are hungry. You
Bella,
have not received salary. You
Bella,
can tell me boldly that you're not engaged in this act of corruption.
The reason why that argument cannot be sustained entirely and will be shut down on arrival is that we've even seen people who are paid higher salaries who commit some of these activities. So it is not whether or not, yes, I mean, economically, you can cite those economic reasons as part of this. But I'm saying that there have also been instances where people receive their full monthly salary and still commit some of these things. We probably may not be in the planting for food and job sector or the agricultural sector, but in our public services, in our civil services, people are paid their monthly salary. Yes, still every day there are incidents of corruption.
But you know that especially where people don't earn their salaries, they are bound to make some of these mistakes. We've been aware of fertilizer smuggling for so long. You said it yourself that even before. But in fact, in 2018, we lost $12 million to fertilizer smuggling. Should we not have implemented all these measures to ensure that we do not find ourselves in this situation again?
That has been our bane all this while as a people. And I wouldn't even restrict or limit this to the MPP government. It has been our bane as a people. And in this case, if you look at this is clearly an act of corruption, an act against the state. But at the end of the day, of course, as a government, you bring in, I have not been briefed about the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, their response to this. Okay. So I wouldn't want to enter into that. Of course, I know certainly they will be taking an action into that. But I'm saying that no matter, however how you design a system and however how complex such a system is, certainly you have human element and human institutions that will go away or against the system and still betray the system. And let us not justify it and glorify it because a person was not paid. I mean, it cannot, that because an MP was not paid, tomorrow he will take one of their chairs and go and sell.
All
He will justify it. I mean, we shouldn't be encouraging that.
Well, joining us this morning as well is also Dr. Clement Apag, the MP for Builsa South. He's also a deputy ranking member on the Education Committee in Parliament. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning,
welcome.
Bella. Soliwa.
Solunawa.
Kubasa. You've done well. You've done well.
I always forget.
Well, in fact, I was surprised. I was waiting in my car doing some research.
Yeah.
I had arrived early.
Oh, okay.
I'm not one to be late.
I know.
Your producer will seek me out.
We're sorry about that.
So I was just in the car doing some small research.
It's good to have you.
You know, your program is eclectic. So
it is, huh?
You must be properly prepared. So just
anyway,
doing some research.
I mean, I remember I've had this conversation with you about fertilizer smuggling as well. And now there's a report that indicates that NAPCO recruits are complicit in it. Well, Kissi Agyebeng says that we cannot use the excuse that they have not been paid for months to be the reason why they will engage in.
I'm saying they've been paid anyway, at least.
Well, he says now they've been paid. We're yet to ascertain that.
Oh, the records are here. You can check. You can
okay.
your producer.
Well, we'd like to hear from the NAPCO recruits as well.
To an extent, I think that I would agree with him. But I think that we have to look at the broader picture of the situation that we are confronted with. In fact, only yesterday, the Minister for Food and Agriculture was on the floor of Parliament to answer a series of questions.
Yeah.
And a number of them bordered on the shortage of fertilizer and the impact. The minister in his response, cataloged a number of reasons to explain why there was a shortage in the system. Of course, he spoke about the smuggling.
Yes.
He also spoke about the inability to pay fertilizer suppliers. And this morning, I've heard, and he said that the government had released some monies
about
to pay.
$260 million.
Yes, so we expect that the situation will be addressed. But you see, the problem I have with this whole narrative is the implications. I come from a rural, agric-based constituency, and I can tell you the number of calls I've been receiving almost every day about the shortage of fertilizer. Largely the inability of farmers, smallholder farmers, to get access to subsidized fertilizer. The whole of this cropping season, as we speak, up to today, we have not received even one bag of subsidized fertilizer under the Planting for Food and Jobs in Builsa South. If it has happened, it must have happened last night. And you see, farming is a time-bound activity. There is a time to plant. There's a time to weed. There's a time to apply the fertilizer. There's a time to harvest. There's a time to process. Many of the smallholder farmers in my constituency, for example, have lost their crops. Because after a certain period, even when you get a fertilizer, it's of no use. And so the impact of the smuggling and the inability to get subsidized fertilizer and the inability to pay fertilizer suppliers on time will be felt, a few months down the line. And it has implications for food security. So we are dealing with a potentially worrisome situation. But this is not only impacting Builsa South, but most of the Savannah belt. Because of the nature of the environment there, we have only one rainy season and one dry season. So when you miss the timing, your crop is destroyed. Now let's come to the issue of smuggling. Look, the bane of our system indeed is corruption and the inability to hold people accountable for engaging in acts of corruption. Ghanaians elect governments partly because of the presentation that governments or parties make on how they are going to fight corruption. And make no mistake, the current Akufo-Addo government rode on the back of a mantra of dealing with corruption in ways that Ghanaians had never seen before. But it has failed. And this is another example. What is going on in terms of the smuggling of fertilizer? It's as a result of official complicity. Look at the figures that you quoted. You see, it is a structured process. And when you have a structured, formal process where persons are appointed to ensure that the right thing is done, these are people who are paid by our taxes. And yet you have these colossal quantities being smuggled, and government officials seem to throw their hands in the air in despair. What does that tell you? Are you not surprised and shocked? For the fertilizers, when they come, there are distributors. They have depots. There is always an itinerary of what company, what entity comes for how many number of bags, from what source to what destination. So how is it that people are able, we are not talking about 4 or 5 bags on the backs of donkeys. We are talking about articulated trucks full, 300 bags, 400 bags, 500 bags. Think about this, at a time when even our land borders are closed. I mean, how do you explain that? If there is no official complicity, how is it possible that at a time when we've closed our land borders, fertilizer from Ghana is still making its way in huge quantities into neighboring countries, if there is no official complicity?
And so for you, the focus shouldn't even be on the NAPCO reports, because
they are at the bottom of the totem pole. They are at the bottom of the totem pole. There are bigger fishes benefiting and profiting from this enterprise. It is not the NAPCO coordinators who are struggling even to get a regular salary. And of course, the temptation is there. It can't be justified, but naturally so. I mean, if they are seeing their bosses doing it, and they can also do away with some 4 or 5 bags to eke out a living in these difficult times, the temptation is very high.
What mechanisms should have been put in place to ensure that we do not get to this point where fertilizer in huge amounts or colossal quantities are being exported out of the country or smuggled?
Obviously, there is a problem with the distribution chain. And that is why, again, we come to officialdom. Because if people are truly going to do their work the way we all expect them to, this shouldn't even be happening in the first place. Let's even take the borders. How does an articulated truck get from Ghana to Togo or Burkina Faso? If it is going through Paga, there is a border there. There is a police post. There are customs officials. There are immigration officials. If it is going through Pulmako in the Pusiga area, the same thing. If it is going to the Volta region, the same way. So how does it get across? And who allows that to pass? What arrangements have been made between the smugglers and those who have to make sure that these trucks don't cross? What arrangements have been made to allow that to happen? And you see, I hate to say this, but it's the same situation with this rosewood illegal trade that I've been crying about for years. How they can harvest the rosewood from those same parts of the country, Butsa South, Sisala West, Sisala East, Mount Karagu and Co. And through all those barriers, get them through to the port for export. How do you explain that? So let's be factual and straightforward. The fight against corruption and the complicity of officialdom are intertwined, because until officialdom begins to act in the interest of the public and the interest of the people, rather than their own personal interests and gain, we are not going to succeed. Because the cabals, the cartels, have people within officialdom who facilitate what happens. Look at Galamsey. Before Operation Galam stop gets to where they are supposed to be, they've been given a hint and they've all scattered. How do you explain that? So the real problem that we have in this country is those of us who are being paid by the taxpayer to protect the public interest, reneging on our responsibilities because of greed. Greed is what is killing us as a nation.
Kissi, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Agric minister came out and said that he saw donkeys, carrying fertilizers to Burkina Faso unaided, and he couldn't question the animals. And so he came under criticism for that. And we're asking those questions that if the minister, on a number of occasions, has made some comments that, led him to public ridicule, then how do we trust that we're making the right decisions to protect our public purse and to ensure that fertilizer especially is not being smuggled? What measures are being put in place? Because now he seems to have become a laughingstock based on some of the statements that he makes.
So if you heard what the Honorable Park said, I think he tried to, I don't know what he meant by officialdom, whether he was trying to blame him political leadership or what. But of course, I do agree that this whole thing still rests on leadership. But I just want to make this point that, for instance, if you look at the supply chain of the fertilizers, they are distributed to the regional and the district representatives of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. These are not politically exposed individuals. So when there is a problem like this, and we want to reduce it to MPP and DC, how do we, at the end of the day, solve the problem? Because if you look at the bureaucrats down there, those who are indeed supposed to get the distribution on board, these are not politically exposed individuals. So I do not guess how we will try to politicize it. But the point is that it shows how complex this whole problem is. And for me, when a problem is of such a nature, the solution to the problem is not the political approach. It's about how we can deal with it holistically as a people and as a country, and not necessarily throw blames on who did this and who did not do that. I mean, if you look since Dr. Park's submission, it's as though when the NDC was in power, this did not happen. And I'm saying that, I mean, you can go into the archives, you can read and predate back then. The problem has been our being. And admittedly, he cited the Galamsey issue. For instance, I've always insisted that if you look at our general performance on some of these initiatives, especially with the enforcement with some of these initiatives and making the system run, it's been poor. For instance, look at the Galamsey. It is not a President Akufo-Addo problem. Neither is it a Mr. Mahama problem. It's been a problem that as a people we've all been trying to solve. And so when we are having a broader conversation like this and it's best being pinpointed as one person, for me is quite unfortunate. But I believe that it still rests on leadership. The Agri Ministry, I'm sure, and I said it, I've not been briefed on that, but I'm sure there are steps, because if you look at the distribution chain, the last time I heard him brief the media, I think there has been some changes. But of course, like I said, it's a human institution, and these are not processes that all of a sudden you can probably mechanize them But bottom line is that in situations like this, interventions like technology, tracking, and other things should be able to help with solving some of these things. At the end of the day, you may not be able to even stop it at the end of it all, but probably if you look at the space of it, or you make it costly so that you are able to reduce the impact, and then farmers are able to get it and for the growing of their crops and other things.
All right, let us move on. Touch on it briefly so we move on.
Let's be realistic. Political power is gained for a purpose. And it is those who have the political power who make appointments. So if you have appointed people to execute a task, and this is the feedback we are getting, clearly you cannot expect to be exonerated from blame. So if the people you have put there are not doing it right, what do you ought to do? You ought to change the persons that you have put in place. And this program, Planning for Food and Jobs, is a political program. It was part of a policy that was sold to the people of Ghana by a political party who gained power and has sought to implement it. And so if there are challenges, you cannot expect to blame anyone but those who have brought in place the program. Especially so when you have eulogized it.
No, we are not running away from the
successful to the extent that we no longer import food, when in fact we still import tomatoes from Burkina Faso.
The point
we're even told that from Morocco as well.
The point I was making was that we are not running away from the challenges. At the end, I admitted that they still rest on leadership. But I'm saying that the attempt to score political points from it.
I actually said officialdom. You are now giving a meaning to officialdom.
No. But I knew you were strategic there. It was the more reason why I tried to place an interpretation on your definition of officialdom. No, I know.
So what is your definition of officialdom?
No, that's what I'm saying, that we cannot reduce it into politics, because I cited the instance of the MOFA officials at the regional level and at the district level. And so in this case, in scenarios like this, we must hold them reliable. We must hold them accountable to some of them. But just a quick one. I mean, I've just been notified of an apology that even Media General gave to the Agri Minister.
Yes. I was going to take that back.
We quickly have to.
I was going to take that back. So it's not the Agri Minister who made that statement.
So he was not loved. At least let's be fair to him.
Well, no. When you go on social media, when that story came out, a few people mocked it, and so that's why I was coming back to it to say that it wasn't the Agri Minister who made that statement. You reiterated almost similar comments, and you apologized for that. No, that's why I was coming back to it. So I was saying that it was apparently the district officer who may have said something.
But you have seen people mocking him.
What?
You have seen people.
You didn't see it?
I've not seen that.
It was all over social media.
I've not seen that.
It wasn't mocked when he
No,
talked
but
about
you apologize for that.
plantain, a bunch of plantain costing 5 Ghana cedis. You didn't see
don't
that statement
introduce
as
new
well?
to You're having a different
No,
conversation.
I'm just bringing that out. You never saw people.
You never
make
know where he
comments
bought
of
that one. So
okay, all right.
If you go to my hometown,
well, it wasn't that Greek minister who made that statement, and I take that back. Okay, let's move on to another story. And Kissi Agyebeng is now the new special prosecutor. He has officially been sworn in into office, and he has vowed to substantially reduce corruption, which he says is one of the 2 pandemics confronting the country currently. He says that if you look at the way government has fought COVID-19 and has really tried to bring it under control, that's exactly what he intends to do as well. He's going to do his very best to make sure that even though he cannot stop corruption entirely, he'll do his best to repress and suppress it. But there are questions as to whether he will be able to function independently, looking at what had happened in the past to Martin Amidu when he also became the special prosecutor. Doc, what do you say?
Well, it is early days yet. But if you look at the circumstances under which Kissi Agyebeng today is the special prosecutor, you have every reason to have doubts.
Rather?
To have doubts because the entire country, for lack of a proper word, refer to Martin Amidu as citizen vigilante because of his stature, his posture, and his attitude. And we believe that was why the President Akufo-Addo deemed him fit to make him the first special prosecutor. But when he became special prosecutor, from his own several write-ups that we call epistles, he made it very clear that he was encumbered. The lack of adequate support to set up his office and to recruit the needed investigators. He spoke about lack of cooperation by government appointees in terms of information that he needed to investigate cases. He spoke about being stonewalled. And even post special prosecutor position, he made some very damning statements and commentaries about what he faced. You remember the nomenclature that has now come to stay. He actually referred to the sitting president as the master of corruption, essentially saying that the president himself was in charge and made it impossible for him to pursue the purpose for which he was engaged. It was under these circumstances that he left. So if somebody has now come in, whom the same Martin Amidu sees as an ally of this current government, and even accused of having played a role in the now back the part deal, you cannot fault Ghanaians for having their doubts. So the onus now falls on Mr. Kissi Agyebeng himself to prove to us Ghanaians that all of these allegations and perceptions about him are unfounded. So I wish him well, because fighting corruption is no mean task. I mean, we know, even those of us who have a tendency of exposing acts of malfeasance here and there, the type of pressure and personal threats that we receive, it's not easy. So,
he was unanimously cleared by the appointments committee.
Well, the appointment committee
and so
is guided.
If your side had these concerns...
We raised them.
Within an hour,
he
was still clear.
Bella, the way Parliament works...
And so that means that you throw your support behind him and you believe that he will do an incredible job.
I am proffering my opinions, me as Dr. Park. And I've told you that these are the perceptions of Ghanaians based on the information that was available. Look, the way Parliament works and the way the Constitution is crafted, quite honestly, the threshold is very low in terms of holding people accountable. I'll tell you the truth. If we are going to be serious about Parliament having a bite in terms of having the ability to block and reject appointees, then we need to seriously look at amending the Constitution. Because the requirements are so basic and so generic that it is very difficult in our type of system for an appointee to be blocked.
You had an equal representation again until recently when the Ascend North issue came out. But you had an equal representation. And, you know, the minority side of the appointments committee put out a list of, you know, some ministers that they did not think, or then they were designated, so they did not think
Actually, it wasn't the minority side.
Who was it then?
It was the rank and file of our party, the Ghanaians, who felt that certain persons, based on their conduct previously, clearly didn't merit.
So it wasn't the minority that came out with that?
No, it wasn't. I'm a member of the minority. We never put out a list. But the point I'm making is that, granting that that was even the case, it would have been very difficult because the threshold, in terms of the constitutional requirements, are so low that many of the issues that you and I would feel that we can use to block somebody's appointment would not stand in a court of law.
Even though you have equal representation?
Yes, they won't stand in a court of law.
Okay, Kwesi, well, I don't know what you say about what Doc said. I mean, the concerns about Ghanaians. And of course, those are also, you know, very profound because, again, Ghanaians are aware that the special prosecutor now works directly under, you know, sort of, even though he's an independent worker, he still works under the AG.
Directly,
the AG,
it's not even sort of.
The AG is a close friend from what we're indicating, from what we're seeing. Could be a close friend. So how will he even be able to prosecute, you know, the AG if he's also found in any form of corruption scandal? How is he going to be independent?
In this country, everybody is friend to another one. If that is the logic, then probably we shouldn't be. I mean, we all all work. We are all friends to each other. But I mean, the point is that Dr. Park raised a very shocking issue. He tried to use Mr. Amidu's words against the government. If you recall, was it not the same Mr. Amidu who placed a name on the airbag scandal in the person of former President John Mahama? So was that also true? I mean, if you want to reduce...
No, but when he was asked...
No, Dr. Park, I didn't interrupt you. No, Dr. Park, no, but you think ours, he wasn't challenged on... No, when you call the president the mother serpent of corruption, you think he wasn't challenged? The same person. Look at the analogy Dr. Park is creating. The same person says that when it comes to airbag scandal, it is former President John Mahama. You don't believe him. But when the same person says that President Akufo-Addo is the mother serpent of corruption, that one is believable. You see the double standard.
He's mixing apples and oranges.
No, Doctor, allow me. Doctor, be fair to me. No, Doctor, be fair to me.
What I'm saying is,
you rebut. The point I want to arrive is that if you are fighting corruption, the fight against corruption even goes beyond individualities. At the end of the day, Mr. Amidu became relevant, and his name, he became relevant because we felt that we needed that person with that tiger mentality to fight corruption. That's why he became relevant. But for me, even if you are fighting corruption, it's about institutions and the reforms that you use to fight corruption. Because, for instance, if you look at any human institution or any system that human hands are more, at the end it leads to corruption. So you look at policies and initiatives like the paperless support system, like the digitization. These are all some of the activities and some of the initiatives that you do to reduce the human hands, and at the end, it translates into reducing corruption. When it comes to the issue about the special prosecutor, that was probably, if you look at the act, and I'm sure Dr. Park was in Parliament when the act was passed.
I was.
That was to tackle corruption among higher public officials and politically exposed individuals. Perfect. If you look at the motive and the intent of even Mr. Amidu's appointment, clearly it shows that the president wanted to fight corruption. Granted that he didn't mean it. At the end of the day, that step alone was symbolic that he wanted to fight corruption. But you look at Mr. Amidu's conduct, some of his statements, of course, if you look at one of Mr. Amidu says that the president tried to interfere in his work. Let's interrogate that statement and bring a clarity to it. You do an assessment of corruption. Indeed, let's state it clearly. It's an assessment. It wasn't conclusive. It could be changed. It's just like a draft document. Then, as an independent special prosecutor, you take that assessment to your appointer. And the appointing authority says that, of course, he is a lawyer. He knows the rules of natural justice, that you cannot be a judge in your own cause, and you also have to give the right to fair hearing, especially when even those that you have implicated And again, that one has not been concluded. I have to state it clearly. Those that you've implicated, they are also the appointees of the president. It was only fair that for the president to say that, hey, Mr. Finance Minister, you have been implicated in this, so please come and give a response. If that could be interpreted as interference, then I'm surprised. If you look at the resources,
you're surprised if that is interference? That
couldn't have been interpreted as interference. Bella, you are sitting here today. Doctor do a risk assessment to you. He comes to give to me. I said that, well, if you look at my mandate and the constitution and even the act that brought you into your office, I cannot make any determination on it. I'm not a court. But at least I can give you that right to fair hearing for you to respond to whatever has been said, so that doctor can then make a final determination on it. If that could be interpreted or misconstrued or construed as an interference, then I'm surprised. The point is that if you look at corruption is a national problem. We have not said that. We have not said that. We've not said that we've tackled it absolutely. We've not said that we've killed corruption. But what we are saying is that if you look at the policy reforms, if you look at the legal reforms, if you look at the critical intervention that we brought with regards to the fight against corruption, compared to the NDC, we have done fair and tremendously better, and we are still doing better. And that point is clear.
Okay, well, the president says he doesn't regret appointing Martin Amidu as special prosecutor. In fact, they equipped him with all that he needed to be able to succeed. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So he's throwing his support on weight behind Kissi Agyebeng as well. Final words from you, Doc.
Well, the point I was seeking to make earlier was that in the case of the allegations made against the former President John Mahama, Martin Amidu, when he was put to strict proof after having sworn an oath, could not justify them. And so that is different. But in any case, you see, we wish him well. But
justify ours.
It shouldn't be the case, as many are suspecting, that he is going to come and witch hunt the political opponents of the current government. Because if that happens, clearly then he wouldn't be living up to expectation. As our leader said when the report came to the floor for debate, he should be fair and impartial in doing the work that he has been given. And if he can be bold enough to defy his appointing authority and the person he reports to, the attorney general, and to focus on working in the interest of Mother Ghana, sooner or later, his own output would endear him to Ghanaians as having justified his position as the second special
Now Dr. Park is becoming more Ghanaian. When President Mohammed's name was joined into the picture, he's becoming more Ghanaian.
We have to go, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. Dr. Clement Park is the MP for Busa South and also the Deputy Ranking Member on the Education Committee in Parliament. And Kwesi Kwarteng is a member of the NPP Communications team. We wish the Special Prosecutor the very best, and of course, we're looking forward to results from him when it comes to issues of corruption. Thank you to Sheila